Ask the Podcast Coach for December 1st, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. Joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from the Average Guy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings. Happy Saturday morning to you. A rainy Saturday morning here, both in Omaha, and I think it's coming your way. So we hope everybody's in a warm place. I guess if they're in the southern hemisphere, they would already be in a warm place, but excited about Ask the Podcast Coach this morning.
Yeah, you can join us. We're out at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And if you, you know what? Dave didn't make the join link. Oh, that's it. He's fired. So we're at Ask the Podcast Coach. This will be the 1 week that we want people to join us. Actually, I can do that in the background while we're talking away. But we are here every Saturday morning. And today we'll probably be talking. There was the Podcast Movement Facebook group almost resorted to a I know you are, but what am I kind of discussion kind of thing. Because Anchor came out with this new thing where they've got sponsors now. And so I was like, well, this is actually kind of exciting. I know I've over the years been not a huge fan of Anchor because I'm not a huge fan of free as a business model in general. I've seen it not work about 5 times, and I just went, that's not going to work. So I went over and signed up. I have a show now. I actually submitted it. I actually said I want to try to submit it to iTunes myself, and it's really rough for them to do that because every time you turn around, they're like, "Don't you want to publish this everywhere?" And it even says in the back end, "We recommend you do this." And I'm like, that's the one that if you do that, they basically control your show on Apple Podcasts. And I'm like, that's not good. And so I went that route. So if you look for the show, whenever it should be listed, probably next week, it's called Anchor Sucks. And I'll be talking about how Anchor sucks. But I was impressed. I'm like, okay, cool. They got sponsors. And yeah, if you want to jump in, it's askthepodcastcoach.com/join. And I'm like, let's see who the sponsors are. And now on one hand, I'm not sure it's because they tied my show. They saw the name of my show and they tied the sponsor. That could be it. But the name of the show or the name of the sponsor is $10 CPM. So woohoo, of which they're going to take 30%. So that means $7. So that's 0.007 cents per download. And the first sponsor I got was, you guessed it, Anchor. So what I thought was something where Anchor was actually going to get some revenue going, like they're actually going to make some money as opposed to paying people to build their studio and paying people $1,000 if they get the most listens and all the other things they've done in the past. I'm like, oh no, this is still something where they're actually spending money. But in this Facebook group, they do have an actual sponsor for somebody at least got it. And that is flipboard.com. And they're paying $15 per CPM minus their 30%. And 30% is fairly, from what I've seen, fairly traditional. If you're working with somebody, they're going to take a piece off the top. So it's interesting. But the thing that I wanted to share, he said, pulling up his Trello board, was Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity to Podcast had a great take here. He said there are currently, and this is total Daniel. Daniel has a tool now that allows him to, because Apple has an API. And if you're like, what's that stand for? I have no idea. All I know is it means you can tap into the back end of Apple. Jim, do you know what? I think you win a gold star if you know what API stands for.
You think so? Is that the? Just Google it. It's an application program interface.
That was going to be my guess.
Yeah,
and that allows you to pull all the data from the back end of Apple in this case. And so Daniel did that. Found there are 609,000 podcasts in Apple Podcasts. That's a lot.
Well, it took him a couple days to do that too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not just like ping, it was there, I think.
Yeah.
He had to kind of go through he had to kind of grind through it to get that number.
And of those, Anchor hosts 72,000, which he actually also said, and I was surprised on this, the one that has the most podcasts, SoundCloud still. And I'm like, interesting. 42,000 of those Anchor hosted shows let's ask this to the chat room. I got to pull the chat room up. So they have 72,000 shows. How many of you? How many? What's the answer to the question I'm asking here? How many of those 72,000 shows have only 3 episodes? We'll throw this out to the chat room. So
of those 70,000, what you're asking?
Yeah.
How many just have 3 or more?
3 or less.
3 or less. Just 3.
Is it 10%, 20%, 30%? Okay.
I would be cheating if I said something.
Mike is saying 65%. And Emily's saying probably because people don't have to pay to keep their old shows on SoundCloud. That's a good point too. So much like Anchor, there's no skin in the game. Jeff is coming in at 80%. That's a good guess.
Should we do hot or cold on this? Hot, you're getting hotter, you're getting colder.
Yeah, I guess we should. He is. Let's see. Right now, I'm sorry, Jeff, you've overbid. Actually, so is Mike. He's overbid. Steve is
so lower than 65%.
Yeah, lower than 65.
Okay.
Clay is coming in at, everybody's going way high.
Not riveting audio. What's the answer, Dave?
Yeah. 42,000 of those 72,000 shows have only 3 or fewer episodes. And he says, for comparison, SoundCloud is actually hosting more podcasts than Anchor, which is 88,000 podcasts, and only 27,000 with 3 or fewer episodes. So Anchor SoundCloud has more shows, but less shows with 3 or fewer less episodes. Wait a minute. Am I reading this right? Only 27,000 with 3 or fewer episodes. 33,000.
Now I think you're just randomly saying numbers.
That's it. 16%, 12, 9.
I think you're just 5, 6, 94.
Right. Pi, 3.14.
It's early on a Saturday.
Yeah, they did. Anchor claims that they are hosting 40% of all, quote, new podcasts. It is nowhere near the truth. Plus the fact that it is a wasteland of dead shows. I think this was Todd's. That doesn't sound like it's Daniel. I think this is Todd's comeback because I can't see Daniel saying that is nowhere near the truth. Plus the fact that it's a wasteland of dead shows at Anchor is a factor in how desperately they are to gain shows that are audience that can be monetized. That's really it's a Facebook comment. Yeah, it's a Facebook comment, but it was it went back and forth. And then I did see where someone had said that the Flipboard was $15 CPM. So so it's interesting. I'll and it's really are, and this is where I'm almost breaking my own rule here because I've kind of, like, it used to be if somebody said Anchor, I would just go into a tirade, and I just realized that the people that want to use Anchor are going to use Anchor. They really, it's almost like, what's the point? They're just going to use it. So I've kind of given up on that. But what
are the 2 or 3 major drawbacks to Anchor, in your opinion? So if you're going to warn somebody, let's try to be objective for just a second. If we're going to talk about the 2 or 3 things, what would you say those are?
My 2 biggies now, because it used to be their terms of service, and their terms of service I need to go reread, but it sounds like they've cleaned those up. Right now, free. They're a free media host, and people go, why is that bad? YouTube's free. And I'm like, that's true. It's a good point. But YouTube also sells ads. So that's the thing. If they actually get this ad thing to work, they, in theory, could become the YouTube of podcasting. Now, the question is that a good thing? Like, because right now, there's YouTube and Vimeo and Wistia. And those are the only 3 video platforms I know that are still around, because there used to be Glib, I think it was, that Ray used to use, a video thing. It's kind of like when Walmart moves in, all the little things go away. So that was the one. It's free, and typically history shows that companies with a free media host or free, and they're going to pay for it with ads. It's been tried about 5 times. The biggest one was Mevio, who went through $38 million and still couldn't make it work. So now that was probably 7 years ago, I would think, at this point, when they went out of business. So that's the biggie, is the free. And then the other thing that I still don't understand why people aren't upset about this is when you go into their system, and I don't know that I can show this anymore, but they have a thing where it says, "Hey, we really think you should be, showing your podcast in other places. Additional platforms. Click here. Doggone it! I guess because I finally did it. No, here advanced. Doggone it. They don't. I apparently because I finally clicked the button, but they constantly say in their back end, click here to be published everywhere, not just on Anchor,
Right.
everywhere. And it even says recommended. And so that's the other thing I just say. It's the only platform that does that. And I understand that they're saying, we're doing it for you, and I wouldn't mind that if they just said, oh, by the way, you won't have access to your stats in Apple when you do this, assuming you have enough downloads for stats. So those are the two things. And so I can see why people, the person that doesn't care about stats, I just want to start a podcast. Well, I don't care about Apple stats. I don't care about you owning my show in Apple. And the business model. Well, okay, so what if they go out of business? I'll use them till they're free, and then I'll move to somebody else. So,
and a lot of folks have done that. They've jumped around. It does. You said this, and it does kind of remind me of an early YouTube model. And if we all think YouTube has always been here and always dominated, but they have not. And there were some early days before they were purchased by Google, when it was, there was some competition there, and they absolutely have. I think they probably have 85 or 90% of the video market share at this point. It could be a little monopolistic, which it would be interesting to see if anybody ever goes after them of being a monopoly in that space, because they do own such a gigantic market share. But it would be interesting to see. I mean, that model is very similar to the early YouTube model, and if they could get advertising working and it was profitable, and people could drive folks there, I think people may feel a little bit different about it, because it's a lot of people are very favorable towards the YouTube model right now. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've had their problems as well with content creators over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And so that was my whole thought. It's like, now if you want to get into video, you kind of have to go on their platform. In a way,
you do. No, you do. You don't have to. You do.
Well, the other thing I thought was interesting, because their sponsorship portal is actually, again, their interfaces seem to be pretty cool. So it's like, hey, do you want this sponsor? It's Anchor. It's $10 CPM. Click here for the script. Another tab says, hey, just read this in your own words. Yada yada yada. So I read it in my own words, because it's like, hey, you know what the easiest place how can I submit my show to Apple Podcasts? I'm like, well, it's easy. Go to podcastconnect.apple.com. And where can I get background music? I don't know, audiojungle.net. Where can I do, so I'm answering all their questions. And then at the end I go, oh, and by the way, I'm getting paid 0.007 cents to say this. So, and I really expected my ad to get rejected, because I was just playing, and it didn't. So that's the ad. And then I go into their FAQ, and it's like, are our ads going to be through approval process? And they're like, not at this point. We're probably in the future, but right now we're not listening to the ads. And I was like, oh, goody. I can go have some fun. So
Daniel says in the chat room, big difference with YouTube is that the video is still very centralized, but podcasts are not. And I think, yes, but had podcasts had the effect that video had early, that may be different, Daniel. I don't know. I don't know. I have to think about that some. Michael has an interesting question. He said, if our podcasts are copyrighted, why are we giving our content away to companies that want to change our file? Because if any of us get to the status of being like Wolfman Jack or even Howard Stern, aren't we kind of messing ourselves up? In other words, if we're saying the content is ours and it's copyrighted, and then we put it everywhere and make it available, aren't we? And if we get famous, then are we, but you're not, it's a little catch-22, right? You're not famous, so you want everyone to have access to it. Copyright is really not a term. Because I copyrighted something, it means absolutely nothing until I enforce it, right? So if someone is violating my copyright policies or whatever, then I'm gonna have to go after them. That's when it makes a difference. Do you have the money? Do you want to enforce your own copyright? By the way, if you start claiming these things and then you don't enforce them, in the future, if you try to, the courts will say, well, you didn't enforce it when so-and-so did it at this time, right? There's precedent in that. So even copywriting is a slippery slope when we actually think the material we're putting out there is actually protected. It's only protected if we choose to enforce that protection. And you've got to be willing and ready to get legal counsel and go after them. So don't have any illusion that because you've put a copyright symbol on something, it protects it. It doesn't protect it unless you enforce it.
Well, and typically a very small minority, at least from what I've seen, people make money, like the podcast makes them money, meaning you pay money to hear my podcast. Usually the podcast is used to promote some other product or service or whatever, that whole 9 yards, to build a relationship with you so that in the future, if I have something to sell or whatever. So it's a tool to grow an audience and to build an audience. And then if you have enough of an audience, like right now, I got an email from Cliff Ravenscraft, who used to do a show called something Balanced Life. I guess it's going to drive me nuts. But Cliff now has said, and Cliff liked that format because he'd be out walking and hit record and like, all right, today I'm doing this thing and here's what's going on in my life and pursuing a balanced life and yada, yada, yada. Well, he tried to take that format over to the Cliff Ravenscraft show, formerly known as Podcast Answer Man. And a couple of his audience went, this new format thingy isn't quite not what I was looking for. Well, he really likes that format. So Cliff is trying something new. And to me, I'm like, this is going to be fun to watch. So he said, all right, I'm going to do, I think it's called the audio journal, because that's kind of what that format is. And you can listen to me talk about my life for $10 a month. Then I went, but if he's enough of a celebrity,
yeah,
and people want to do that, God bless America. I was like
putting money where your mouth is. If people will pay for it, it's valuable.
Yeah.
If people ask, how about what is this car worth or what is this house worth? And people put a number. No, it's worth what someone is actually willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
If you've got something and people, we are grappling with this at Gallup a lot. I've got a group of folks who really want me to start monetizing and charging for our podcast. And it's a big, gigantic marketing tool, and it's created community. It's done what you've said, but there are things. I've had people contact me and say, if you'd make this easier, I just pay for it. I don't want to mess with all the download stuff or figure out how to get stuff or whatever. Just serve it to me and I will pay for it. There are individuals people pay for convenience. And so if you can make it easier for them or add value to it and it's worth something, they'll pay for it. But yeah, it's only worth what people are actually willing to
pay for
to pay for it. This is why broadcast advertising has such a low CPM, because you're blasting a message to an audience that may or may not be receptive to it. And so you will never, it's why targeting audiences or targeting advertising is so much more valuable, because you're getting it into a spot that's going to turn, right? It's going to actually convert, the word they use in the marketing world. It's actually going to convert to something. And so those are more valuable spaces. So it's, if Cliff can do that, I mean, more power to him to get it done. I think podcasting just started so grassroots and so, under the covers. And so whatever else you want to add in there, right? Whatever metaphor you want to add in there. And it's just now coming to a spot where we're trying to figure out, like YouTube is already done for video, to figure out what is the right centralized platform. By the way, I don't think we're close to it. We still are very, very diverse, and we think we have all these platforms still out there. I still think it's a pretty diverse ecosystem as far as who owns it.
Well, and I know Todd and Rob have been batting around the idea of having some sort of centralized, I don't know what we would call it, agency, board, union is not the right word, but some sort of global panel of podcasters. And it's an interesting idea. It would be interesting if we could hey, let's get a central unit so we can all chip in some money and maybe buy some advertising. or have a global, almost like to me, I'm like, well, isn't that kind of what International Podcasting Day is, where we all get together and talk about podcasting? I'm like, so it's interesting that they keep talking about that. I actually kind of said I'm still looking for the why, because to me, like with a podcast, if you can solve a problem in your episode, that's typically good content. So I'm not sure what problem having, there was the Association of Downloadable Media for a while, and the problem that didn't work is just going back to your original point. Everybody's so diverse, because now how do you get all the podcasters to agree on something? Well, because we all
Yikes.
because we all have, number one, there's always, and I'll just call them the rogue podcasters. The guys that like, look, man, this is awesome. I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want. I'm just going to do it, So when you go, hey, here's best practices for podcasting, they're just going to take that and go, let me read that. And then they're going to wipe their butt with it. So, that I'm like, good luck with this. It's an interesting concept. And I don't think it's a bad idea. To me, I'm still like, why do we need this again? So, yeah. But it is, we are a diverse bunch. Jeff says, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this week I was talking to a bunch of our customers who were in, and there were 9 of them, and 7 of them had not listened to our podcast coming up. And I said to them, while I was talking to them, I said, hey, we're on Facebook here, and you can subscribe. Both Android and iPhone have a podcast app. You can subscribe that way. Now I can't tell who subscribed right away, but I immediately got 8 requests to be added. By the time I got back to my desk, they had all gotten on their phones during the class and had asked to be, put in the Facebook group.
Nice.
And so that's kind of what we want, I think, regardless of the platform. Like, we want them engaging with our stuff. I host my Home Gadget Geeks over at Maple Grove Partners, but I use Spreaker at work. I work with you on Libsyn. I love what's going on with Todd and what he's doing over there, Blueberry. I'm not sure we necessarily have a platform problem. Like, I think the ecosystem's healthy. I think it's good. I think we've got diversity. I think we've got choice. Like, the video, we don't have choice anymore. Like, there is no choice with video. You are going to YouTube, and I think that's bad. And so I think this rich diversity, have these battles that we're having, these conversations. I think it's healthy for the podcaster. And so I think we're in good shape. This is not a sign that we're in trouble. I don't know if consolidating, I heard this conversation come up, I think, with Rob Greenlee too, on his show, on Spreaker live show, about putting this association together to give us some power and some of those things. What a cluster that would be. Like, I cannot even imagine trying to do something like that and actually having it do something. Maybe it could. Maybe it'd be fine. But I actually think the podcasting ecosystem is super healthy and very competitive. I like it because we're talking about it. So I think I want more of this, not less. And I want more anchors coming in, shaking things up, or SoundClouds coming in, shaking things up, trying different things. If they fail, they fail. And we need to warn folks like, hey, you got to, you're getting what you pay for. Yeah. You're getting what you pay for. But I actually think more is better than less in what we're doing. And I think it's healthier as we figure this out.
And Steve mentions it is easy to get banned by YouTube these days.
Yes, it is. And then what? What do? Who can you appeal to? Where else can you go? You can't.
The awesome Google customer service team.
1-800
1-800-GO-POUND-SALT. Yes,
exactly. We're not particularly clear on our phone number. It's a bad. The video space is bad right now, and you don't have options. And when YouTube says, "Yeah, we're going to cut revenue on you," what do? Well, go somewhere else. Well, no, you can't. You can't go somewhere else. So
yeah. And I mean, a lot of those guys are now doing Patreon campaigns, but they're still using YouTube to fund the Patreon thing. And that's going to be how long till Patreon sets up some sort of, or YouTube sets up some sort of, audio tool to, like, when they hear the word Patreon, I'm like, we have decided to ban this video because you said the P word. So
yeah, I kind of do like, we're seeing, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I've been looking at BitTube, which is at bit.tube, and it's a competitor to YouTube. it's all based on the blockchain. So there's some value there. Whether that system will work or not is debatable, but they've got a pretty good little video system going on over there. Some people are starting to sense like, okay, YouTube's become a monopoly and it's probably ripe for disruption. And it probably is, just to be honest. You got to kind of come up with a system that works and doesn't go down and can host all these video files and do all these things. But YouTube is ripe for disruption. This is one of those areas if somebody can figure out a way to do it better. There are a lot of disgruntled content creators on YouTube, and people could start walking pretty fast. So
Clay says in the chat room, are there good shows that never rise to the top of their niche because of the difficulty of being heard? Because it's so easy to start a podcast, no one can sort through the garbage.
That's a great question.
That is a great question. Possibly, because I think because Daniel's been playing with this tool, and I think we kind of came to the conclusion that more or less 5,000 to 6,000 new podcasts came out in a week. That's a lot of podcasts, and that's where I think this number of how many of those have 3 episodes or less is interesting, because I think a lot of people are starting a podcast. I think a lot of people are going, never, and especially if you have no skin in the game. If it's free, it would be easy to walk away. Although there are those that would say, no, if it's costing me money, I'd walk away quicker. But
let's ask the same question about video, because there's no shortage of videos being added to YouTube, right?
Oh, no,
that's right. So does that mean that there are great videos out there that are not rising to the surface because there's so much noise? Yeah. That's true. I mean, who gets to the top and who doesn't? I've joked about this before on the show. I watch videos of people mowing lawns that have 500,000 views. Someone mowing their lawn, right? And I'm like, okay, so why does that get there? And there's some really great. I was watching some sci-fi, some indie sci-fi on YouTube last night. Really good produced stuff. 15,000, downloads. And you're like, this should be more popular. Yeah, that's going to happen on these platforms. It's absolutely going to happen. Why? I do not know. I wish I did know. Jeff
has a great, in the chat room here, a small grain of sand on the bottom of a large pond will never be noticed the first time. So no one will ever know how good you are unless you're famous to start with. And I saw something
that's true.
Well, I did see somebody this morning in Facebook that said, let's say his name was, I don't know, Steve Stewart. We'll pick on Steve. So Steve Stewart's going to start the Steve Stewart show in the vein of Joe Rogan. He goes, I'm going to do a Joe Rogan style show, and I'm, whatever, Dick Smedley. It's the Dick Smedley show. And I'm like, nobody knows who Dick Smedley is. And I'm like, that's a whole different ball game when you start and you are nobody. You're going to have to struggle to get your cousins to listen to, and you want to be Joe Rogan. And I'm like, I don't know. I swear I'm going to write that blog post and go through Joe Rogan's history. I'm like, this is what this guy did. And then he started a podcast. I'm like, that's almost like a John Lee Dumas thing where people think, oh, if I just do this, if I just ask these 6 questions and call my show on fire, I'll be famous. I think now it's like, ooh, if I do like 4-hour podcasts and do a lot of drugs, I'll be famous like Joe Rogan. And I'm like, don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, Joe Rogan had other things going for him before he started doing that. So to Jeff's point, I think was sometimes, unless you're famous to start with, all these folks whose podcasts are at the top have put in an enormous amount of work and have worked the channels and have gotten promotions in places and have done, nobody does this. Very few, let's say, do this by just getting lucky, right? Many of them have agents and they've paid money and they've gotten in. I mean, there's a world that almost 99.9% of all podcasters have no idea what is, and that's the world of agents. And having an agent who is out there actively working to get you into spaces, to get you on news shows, to get you on programs, to get your name out on TV, to get things advertised for you. That's what you pay when you have an agent. That's what you pay them to do, and they're connected with people. And so sometimes we wonder, like, how did so and so rise from this to that? Well, he or she had an agent and it's basically an advertiser for you that did that. We know the podcasting world knows nothing of that. I was just sitting with LinkedIn this week. Their staff was with us. Some of their representatives were with us, and we've been trying to do a lot of viral or organic growth campaigns through recruiting on LinkedIn. And they just kind of looked at us and said, it doesn't work, guys. You have to pay to play. They didn't say it that way, but that's kind of what they said. And if we want to get our podcast out there more, organic growth, doing these things organically, most of the time just doesn't work. You're just not going to get very far. You only have such a reach. You really do need to pay somebody else or another platform or advertising to get that thing out. And if you don't know what you're doing, chances are you're probably going to screw that up the first couple times. If you pay someone to do it for you who knows what they're doing, I bet you'll see some results.
Yeah, I'm working with a client. He's launching his show, and we've got him through his first episode. He's just submitted to the directories last night. He was all excited. And he said, you know what else I'm doing? I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to hire a marketing person. He's like, look, I've got the editing. I can do that. And I've got my content. I've got my episodes outlined. He's like, he goes, I've got a day job. I got 2 kids and a wife. He goes, and it just dawned on me that, somebody needs to promote this thing, and it's not going to be me. He goes, it would be great if it was me, but I got other things I got to do. So I'm going to hire somebody to do this, and she's going to work on my website and update some things. And he's like, cause I've read where it kind of takes a team if you really want this to go. And I go, well, not always, but in many cases, yeah. I said there are always exceptions to everything. There's like Lore, the guy that's Aaron Lanke, who's now got a show on HBO and books and all that. I think he's a team of 2 or 3. Mark Maron is like a team of 2. Mm-hmm. There are a few out there that it's just a couple.
Maron's got an agent though. He has a bigger team behind him. That's a machine. When Mark Maron did a podcast, we all heard about it, not because Mark Maron at the time was famous, but there was a lot of advertising going on around that to make that thing happen. The fact that he got to interview the president, he didn't make that phone call to get the president, right?
No, they actually called him.
Well, that's right. But it's just, it is one of those things. I think if you're going to be an indie solo podcaster and you think you're going to do this on your time while you're working a full-time job, chances are you don't have enough hours in the day. And Dave, the other mistake podcasters make is you got to lean into this thing and spend some money into it.
Yeah.
Like you got to put the money out ahead of time. You've been through this. You've actually put out more money for things than anybody I've ever seen. Like when you talk on School of Podcasting, you're like, okay, I bought this. And I don't think most people are even willing to buy it. If I have a gadget show, and if I really wanted to get in and play with the players in the gadget space, I would probably need to spend $10,000 or $15,000 in the first year to buy gadgets myself, get them reviewed, get them on YouTube, get those, buy some advertising, get some of those things up, and maybe even more than that. Maybe we're talking 20 or 25 grand to really establish the channel, right? And get some things rolling. I don't think most podcasters are willing to drop that kind of coin to get a business going, and that it's going to hold you back.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Clay in the chat room has a great question, and I don't know an answer to this. What services would you recommend on getting the name out there front? For free, podcast singular, guests plural, podcastguest.com is free. He was just on the Podcasting for Radio Dummies show with Ed Ryan. So that would be one out there. But I don't know that there are all sorts of Interview Valet, and Jessica Rhodes has Interview Connections, I think that's it. But those started off affordable, but they went after a different clientele, and they're all like, you're paying $300-$400 per interview. So like if I'm going to get interviewed twice a month, they want somewhere between $600 and $800 now. And I'm like, and then then it's like, oh, they've got you on, the Dick Smedley show. And I'm like, I've never heard of Dick Smedley, but they're like, yeah, but he'll take you. And I'm like, so that's, I don't know, Jim, what would you think of?
Yeah, this isn't, I don't live in this world.
That's
so
me.
I'm not going for that. But, I think this so depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
What's your niche? Where are you? if you're say you're in the hunting game, right? And you're talking about, you're in the podcasting world and you're talking about guns and knives and gear and camo and all that other stuff. Well, I think the trick to this, I honestly think, Dave, is you got to get the vendors involved, because when you get the motivations right, when you get the people, like, they want you to be successful because you're carrying their gear and you're advertising for them. And when they'll promote you, when you promote them, and you got to build a relationship, just like anything else. You got to go in there and have somebody on the inside and do some things. That's just an example. I think every niche is different in what they do. And you got to kind of figure out, how do I get partnered with people who will promote me? The value in this is the exponential growth of it. When people tell people who tell people who tell people, you got to find how that works in the niche that you're in. And then fully understand how big the niche is. If you're into knitting in Iowa, just to go way back to a joke that we had if you're, knitters in Iowa, you're probably going to have a pretty small audience. Just saying.
Michael said we could all make commercials for our own podcast. And I kind of said, we used to do that back in the day, and we called them promos, and we would swap promos all the time. In fact, I think I still own Podcast Promos Swap. There's nothing there now because I had an old WordPress site and didn't do anything with it. And guess what? Yeah, it got hacked to pieces. So if you don't keep your WordPress up, but I actually had a site where you could upload your promo, and the whole thing was to, here's a whole site of promos. And if you use somebody's, let them know, hey, I played your show. That doesn't mean they have to play yours, but if you're just looking for a place for promos, there used to be a bunch of those. And it was because, again, if we go back 10 years ago, there weren't 500, 610,000 podcasts. And it was like, I'm looking for another, golf show or whatever. You'd hear this and that. So,
yeah, but I don't think promos are it. Daniel's saying he doesn't like listening to them. I don't think promos are the thing unless you're engaged in it, right? We've been, at the end of my show, I've been thrown in HelloFresh. And I've been, they don't sponsor me. I have a promo link. It's an affiliate relationship. I was given away, I got two kinds of coupons, the ones where they just get free money and I get nothing, and then a 50-50 split. And I was trying to give away the ones where I got nothing, and my listeners didn't like it. They were like, no, we want you to make something in this deal. And so, we kind of switched to that. But the point on this is, it's taken me, like, I've been saying this at the end of the show for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now. And it's just now starting to kind of click with the listeners because it's consistent. I'm always talking about it, right? I think if you're going to engage in these communities, you got to get in a place where it's repetition. One promo, even if you ran one promo on, well, I'll give you an example. I did a review that made it way back in the day, back when Byte.com was a thing. I did a review that got posted on Byte.com, and I had a link on there back to my site, and I just got hammered that day, the day it posted, the day it went live. I had a record number of folks come to my site. Within a month, I didn't see a single change in my podcast numbers. Right. Because one and done doesn't work. You've got to build a relationship with people. You've got to get in a space where they're hearing it over and over and over and over. And you're like, finally, someone will go, oh, I got to really listen to that. That's advertising, right? You got to be, so a one and done promo doesn't work. You got to build relationships with people. Dave, you and I, this is a perfect example. I get emails now, maybe once a week, every other week, of people who say, I listen to you on Home Gadget Geeks and on Ask the Podcast Coach. Like, now we're talking. You and I have developed some cross branding. Like, they know you through me, but we've done 200 and whatever shows here. I can never remember the number. Not like we care. With you, 234, maybe 235. I don't know.
I'll have that answer in.
So while you're looking that up, it's the consistency of our relationship that matters, right? People know us together because we've done this, and it translates differently. I think the consistency is what matters. So how many have we done?
230. This is 235.
Oh, that's close.
So very good.
I do as a total guess, by the way. So you see what I'm saying with that? Don't you think that the consistency in some of the relationship stuff that we do is the key? Banner ads, or what was the banner, the very first banner thing we did on the web? What was that called?
And it was like, go to the next one. Web rings.
Yeah,
Web rings. Yes. That's what bring back web rings.
Oh my God. Totally worthless.
And I actually got traffic from that. Now, I don't know if it was a robot, but I remember,
No, it might have been.
I was a part of a musician web ring. And so people would go around, but all it was other musicians, it's like
sometimes even a blind squirrel finds a nut, right? So
that's it. Well, speaking of blind squirrels, boy, there's a weird. Hey, we can talk about that when we
smooth
come back.
Transitions. You mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, smooth or not smooth transitions, because that was one of the jokes on Saturday Night Live was how bad podcasters transition. And I'm actually starting to think that maybe we should just go, hey, we're going to talk about, you were just talking about cross promoting. And I've got a story about how Anne Murray, we're going to go, this is actually almost before my time, how Anne Murray cross promoted her way to stardom. And I wish I could remember, Jim, if you could Google Anne Murray and see what hit she had, because I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's an interesting story. Anyway, if you want to go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, I'll let you even do some happy music for this. At the beginning of the month, we thank everybody, which means Dave has to take a big old deep breath. So Josh Liston, last week we mentioned, hey, that consulting spot is open, and Josh took that over. So Josh from onthebubblepodcast.com, super great guy. Greg from Debt Shepherd at debtshepherd.com. Jonathan Bloom over at weeklyawesome.com. Gren the Greek, Glenn the Geek over at horseradionetwork.com. Josh at podcastingexperiments.com. Max Trescott, spelled correctly this week. Thank you, Max, at aviationnewstalk.com. I can't believe I did that when his name's on the actual album art. Shane at spybrary.com. The one and only Kerry Bond, who does the Key West Perspective. Find it at keywestperspective.com/podcast. My buddy Ronsley from the Amplify Agency over across the pond in Australia. Find him at mustamplify.com. And then our $10 patrons, Jeffrey Hallish at Podnuts. That's PODNUTZ. Nick Stuberling from CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Sean at BeYourOwnNerd.com. Barry Kessler at, you guessed it, BarryKessler.com. Jay Cleveland Payne at MoreBetterMedia.com. Our $5 patrons, Jason Bryan from Matt Talk Online, Illiquity at TravelGlutenFree.com, or also try.me. Boy, I've got to write that down. Corey Finneran at IVNV.com, Jason over at CUATX.com, Jeremy Dennis at TransmissionsPodcast.com, some guy named Jim Collison at TheAverageGuy.tv, Joel Solsihai at StackingBenjamins.com, Joe Taylor at OnFaceEdge.com, Kim Slusher at DistractedLifePodcast.com, Michael Ray at Someday He Will Give Us a Domain, Master Cauldron at CauldronsCrypt.com, Rob Griffiths at bedtime.fm. You can also go to /storytime/peace out and find his shows over there. Troy Heinrichs from the blacklistexposed.com, Kyle at gagglepod.com, Matthew at scottishpodcast.com, Michael at Baby Mountain Radio. That's about caregivers for dementia. So babymountainradio.com. Chris at iamsaltlake.com. Ed Ryan, check out his show, Podcasting for Radio Dummies. And also check out the new Podcast Business Journal.com. Ross at livestreamuniverse.com. Ryan at myperfectpodcast.com. I believe that is coming soon. Our $1 patrons, Adam at odddadoutpodcast.com. Anthony at route66podcast.com, and that is 2 numbers 66podcast.com. Audio Dice Network at audiodice.net. Barb at anchor.fm/barbtusa. Brandon at seahawkerspodcast.com. Creepy Kingdom at creepykingdom.com. David at Ottawa Works. Diane at DianeLaneMassage.com. Emily at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Garrett at utrmedia.org. Gary and Margaret at beekeepingpodcast.com. Craig at ingleaspodcast.com. Chris and Brandon at floridafocuspodcast.libsyn.com. The International Podcast Awards at latinpodcastawards.com. Jason over at TV Times THREE, so tvtimes3.com. Jay Poole at potstirpodcast.com. I always have to, I don't know why, my eyes go crazy when I read that one. Lucas over at triangletactical.net. Mike Moody at Low Cut, a podcast about the art of podcasting at lowcutpod.com. Paul at fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Patrick over at the Big Seance Podcast. Sean at sleptinclass.com. Sean over at clarinet.com. That's a show about, as you might guess, the clarinet. And the one and only Wayne Henderson over at mediavoiceovers.com. If you would like to be an awesome supporter, thank you so much to all of my awesome supporters. Simply go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And apparently my mouth, oh, right, I couldn't have ended that any better on that music. Holy,
that was nice. Good work.
So, but do we know if Anne Murray had any hits?
Canadian singer, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you were looking for the hits too?
Yeah.
Oh, yikes! You Need Me.
Okay.
Just Another Woman in Love. I just fall in love again. All in the 70s and 80s.
Yes. So here's the thing. Do you know why she was famous? One of the things that got her famous was there was something to do with vampires. There was a club in Los Angeles, and all these people, Alice Cooper and stuff like that, would go and hang out. And in some cases, the Beatles. And so I don't know if she planned it this way or not, but she happened to get right next to John Lennon and I think Paul McCartney, but definitely John Lennon, and had a photographer take her picture. And that picture got into the newspaper, which suddenly made Anne Murray cool. Like, she must be somebody. She's standing next to John Lennon. So all you need to do to get your podcast big is go stand next to John Lennon. That's it. That's all. Well,
that's a little lucky. I'm sure others stood next to John.
Yeah.
Danny's song too. Steve Sleeper was throwing these in too. Danny's song is in there. Broken Hearted Me. Never. Yeah. I've heard her. I've never.
I've heard the name. I'm like, I'm totally dry. Well, as soon as I would hear it, I go, oh yeah, that song. Yeah, like I said, she's a little before. I just remember seeing her when I was wee little.
I think the message though, Dave, in this is, so she got a break. She was in the right place. Lennon, blah blah. We're never going to get those chances again. But right. if you got to be out doing things, like you got to get out from behind your microphone. You've got to go do some stuff. You've got to be a part of some things. You've got to meet people and network. So yeah, I think if anything, you got to at least try to be in the right space, and you never know. Like, and this is one thing I avoid actually when I'm in circles where there are famous people. That creeps me out to creep them out. So I am kind of like, I never take those chances. I'm like, I'll let other people just do that stuff. But get out there and get out there and network, meet some people, do some stuff.
That is actually on my list of, I should probably do more of that in 2019. I mean, I went to a lot of events this year, which was great.
You do pretty well.
But like locally, I do nothing. I mean, I do the podcasters meetup here, which is once a month, but I kind of have resurrected a little bit the Building a Better Dave show, just because I had some things to talk about. There was with the whole Queen thing, I had a really, I think, funny Queen story. And so I resurrected that story and a couple other ones, and people have like, I love this show. And I'm like, which I still don't get, because there's no goal to that show at all. There's it's just me yakking into the universe. But I'm like, half the stories, because I went back and discovered that when I imported that show many, many moons ago, I think that was the thing. I switched to Libsyn, but I didn't. How did I do that? Basically, to make a long story short, my media host went dead. So we're talking about places going, well, Mevio went out of business, and I didn't import my stuff before they went completely out of business. So I have a bunch of things on my website, especially from 2008, that the files are dead. So I've been slowly, replacing those. And half those, any episode that seems rather entertaining, it's because I went and did something. Or I'm talking about, and I was like, I'm not going to get any new stories sitting here. Yes, I can see things on social media and things like that I can talk about, but I'm like, I see things all the time where it's like, especially on meetup.com, it's like 50 and fun. And I'm like, yeah, I should probably go to that, just if nothing else. Because there's two options, really.
Never know.
There's three options. A, I'm going to get a good story if it's horrible. B, if it's really fun, well, then I'm going to also get a good story. So either way, you kind of end up with a story or something like that. Emily says you can always find a podcast brunch near you. Just talk to other podcast listeners, not other podcasters. See, that's hard for me to do. Everybody in my audience is a podcaster. You get a lot of insight from them about what they like and dislike about podcasts in general. Yeah, I would look for my topic. So if I was doing a show about, like, I used to attend the WordPress meetup. There's a WordPress meetup here in Ohio, and I would go to that.
Yeah, I think Emily, that gives me a good idea. Whenever you do meetup stuff, I think the attendance increases if you definitely have an agenda and you're doing something interesting. And just around our topic today, Dave, I think I would start the first couple and just say, hey, look, when we get together, we're going to talk about promotion success, because that's what everybody really wants, right? Yeah, we can talk about hosting and some of the mechanics and, equipment, blah, 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 blah. But I think everybody's really drawn to, how do I increase my audience size? And so, yeah, maybe I'll do that. What's been holding me back from doing an Omaha podcasters meetup group is just those topics of things to talk about and have things ready to go. And I think you could, if we do it every other month and just make the topic, bring your success stories. How are you advertising and having success? And we'll start with there and go from that. That's a good idea. Emily, thank you for that inspiration.
That is so weird you say that. You know what this week's episode of the School of Podcasting is?
Advertising and inspiration?
No, but it is kind of. I'm going to go back today because it's kind of like I don't have any interviews signed up. There's really nothing. And I was like, what everybody wants to do is grow their audience. So I'm going to sit down this weekend and brainstorm, and I'm going to go all Daniel J. Lewis on us. And however many I have, the topic's going to be 39 different ways to promote your podcast. Because it's just one of those things like, well, let's take a poll right now. I'm into these. Let's do very visual things on.
I don't believe in polls.
On the audio. Said the Gallup guy. How many
polls are overrated?
Yeah. How many people have a link to your podcast in your email signature? Just type yes or no in the chat room. Be honest.
Say that again. How many have a?
Do you have a link to your podcast in your email signature?
Yeah, me.
So like for me, it says Dave Jackson, blah, 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 schoolofpodcasting.com.
You know what, though? I don't, while they're coming in, I don't have one in my Gallup signature. Like, duh. Why am I not saying, I have to change that?
Yeah, we have a couple good. Yay to the people who are being honest and saying no. We have a couple no's. We have a couple yes. The link is to your website. That's fine. I'm just amazed at how many people like their signature is Dave Jackson. And I'm like, and then there are those people that also that type War and Peace, like Dave Jackson, every day is a journey of exposure to the sun where your life will be happy. And they're like, okay. And then it's like website, fax number, pager number. And I'm like, okay. I'm like
Magna Carta.
Mission statements, life is but a journey of many steps.
Facebook profile pictures.
Yeah, that's a little much, but I'm always amazed. I'm like, because there are people that are like, hey, I'm doing the show, and I'll always email. And if I have to email you and go, tell me where I can find your show, you don't have a link in your signature. And I think I still do. You can take like a pretty link and go into, like, I can type schoolofpodcasting.com, but in the link, make it schoolofpodcasting.com/signature that then goes to schoolofpodcasting.com. Go into pretty link and see how many people click on your signature, and you'll be amazed at how many people, again, and it's not going to be 10,000 downloads, but you're like, wow, I had 8 people click my signature this week that couldn't click it if it wasn't there, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's just little things like this that I go, okay. So,
can I tell a cool podcasting story real quick?
You can tell a cool podcasting story. 5
minutes left here. So yesterday at Gallup, we partner with the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. We have a Strengths Institute there, which is really, really cool. And we won't get into that, but it's just a partnership between Gallup and the university. We get a chance to teach 2 management classes. And so yesterday we had a management class in, and they were responsible for doing some projects, and they were showing their projects off. And part of the class, you talk about promotion. Part of the class was the instructor required them to listen to one of our podcasts, which was super cool. So, 40 students listening to one of these podcasts. So I was sitting at a table talking with another one of the students, and 2 students came by. I kind of just caught them out of the corner of my eye, and they were talking to the instructor, and they had their phones out and they were looking. And what they were doing is they're like, hey, is this guy here? This guy in the album art, right? And they were like, hey, you mean the guy from the podcast is here, right? So Tim interrupted and introduced, and it was fun to kind of see that engagement click where it was obvious they had engaged in the product, because you don't get that kind of response unless somebody engages in the product. And so really, really cool to have that to kind of think, oh my gosh, I'm creating this material that's being used by a university class in their management stuff, and it's having this kind of impact on them. And then I got a chance to meet them through this time. By the way, I gave like 3 hours of my morning to this group to just be there. So when we talked about giving up time or just being in the place, I could have said, I'm too busy. Like, I just get too much work to do.
Right.
No, you got to give up some time, to be in there, to meet them, to have that kind of experience. So it was really super cool. As a enterprise podcaster at that point, I felt super proud that it was like, yes, we're doing the right thing, so
well, that, and when you meet somebody who's going, I think that's him, that's super huge. And they're going to go tell somebody, I actually got to meet this guy and he's really, really cool. That's where you can really start to, stoke the fire, for lack of a better phrase, or that's really when people go, I need a marketing team. That's your marketing team right there.
Yeah, and it's viral. That viral does grow. I don't think it grows as fast as when you pay for marketing, by the way, but it is a great, as a podcaster, it's a great feeling to have someone say, hey, thanks, I listened to this, it was super helpful. And especially that's why we make that material there, is to be helpful. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah. You ever had an idea and it just went?
Oh, totally. Every day. Like most days. That's like, oh, that was a good, it's gone.
Yeah.
I think that's 50, Dave. I think that's what happens when you turn 50.
Yeah. I've had people ask in the chat room today, Dave, did you get your new computer? It's still sitting in the living room.
Yeah, what's the slow up on that thing? Why is it not installed?
The biggest problem is, and especially this week now, my brother, who normally goes to Florida about the 18th of December, like a week before, maybe 2 weeks before, has announced that Christmas will be held December 8th. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, he goes, his mother-in-law is having a hysterectomy. And so she's going to be kind of down for the count. And the father-in-law is a really nice guy, but also not the healthiest person on the planet. So they're going to go down really early to kind of help out, because she has to really be like down for the count for a while after the surgery. So he's like, yeah. And I'm like, which was great, because he actually was last night out with my great nieces and nephews. He's like, hey, so-and-so wants this and that and this and that. He goes, I'm here. I can send them to the car and buy this stuff, and then you can pay me. I'm like, great. My brother is doing my Christmas shopping. This is the best ever. So, yeah, so it's been just a case. And then like last night I put up the tree. And the other thing is, here's the thing with, I thought this was going to be slow, and it's really not, because everybody's trying to get their podcast ready for January 1st. So I'm actually getting
some work.
Yeah, getting some work. So I was like, so I actually need to schedule like a night, like, hey, Thursday night is, take the time and get all the final files off your computer, and which again,
that's the key. That's the key. Like, don't go rushing into this. Get it backed up. Here's a recommendation from me to you. Plug that thing in, find a monitor. I'm sure you got an extra monitor somewhere. Plug it in, get it connected to the internet, turn it on, start the updates. Just because it's going to just kind of let that thing find its way onto the internet. The worst possible thing you could do is next Saturday morning about 7:30, you're like, oh, I'm going to install this new computer into my network, and I'm going to be podcasting by 10:30. Well, that is it possible? Totally. Should you do it that way? No. You need to get this thing fired up, leave it on, make sure it's fine. You do want to make sure it's not, it was reconditioned. You bought a reconditioned.
Yeah. Yes, so, true. I probably should be checking that anyway.
Yeah, turn it on. Just let it run for a week, and you've got plenty of time. It's a busy season. Just let that thing burn itself in and be a thing. Get the software installed on it. You're going to need to install some software. Let that thing run, then swap it over when it makes sense. Like when you find yourself on it more than you're on your other one, then just swap them. So don't be in a hurry. Take your time. Burn it in. You'll be fine.
I am trying to. I'm on a Facebook post. Emily mentioned that I actually had my brother on my Facebook page, and here we go. Share. I just want the link. I'm like, give me the link to
click on the time. So, on Facebook, it'll have
Click on the time.
below the post.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah, that'll take you to the URL.
Because I'm like going, what the heck? I'm like, how do I actually get the link to this? So, because my brother looks a lot like, especially now that I have a beard and mustache, because that used to be the thing. Well, Dave's the guy without the beard. And so then when 2 years ago, for Grovember, I decided to grow a beard and just I like the whole not shaving if I have to kind of thing.
I did the reverse no shave November.
I noticed
shave November. It's coming back though.
Is it? Okay. And
oh yeah,
you're
it's coming back. Yeah.
You're also tired of shaving every day?
Well, and because you still have to shave, right? But I'm to that itchy spot this morning.
That's the worst.
I know. I just got to push through it.
Well, are you taking time off for the holidays? Are you gonna? I know you took a week off for Thanksgiving. What's coming up on the average?
Yeah, we'll push right through it. So Christmas is on like on a Monday, and New Year's is too, or something like Monday or Tuesday. So we record Thursday. So no, we're pushing right through. We're back to the regular schedule. If you want to, we talked about post Black Friday stuff on the most recent episode. I haven't posted it yet, but it will be there. TheAverageGuy.tv.
Yeah, and like I said, on the School of Podcasting, I'm going to brainstorm all the different ways you can promote your show. And we'll probably also talk about if you're doing like how to get the most out of your guests. So if you're a person who's had one of those things, a guest on your show, how to make it super easy for them to share your show. But in the post show today, we'll be talking about, hey, I have a 4-person podcast. What kind of gear do I want? Because this person had sent that in. We're also going to talk about what if I go to do a podcast and somebody already has the name? That's something I had slid up here to talk about. We'll also talk about the phrase "for you." We kind of mentioned that a little bit today in when we're talking about Anchor, but I found another service that is saying, "Hey, we will do this for you," and I'm like, not sure that's crazy, but we are here every Saturday. We're not going anywhere for the holidays. We're here every Saturday. 10:30 Eastern, askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And if you have a question now and you're like, oh, it's not Saturday, go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/contact. And if you can't be here live, we'll, send us a recording. We'll play it here in the show. But thanks for listening. Stick around for some post show.